All right, today we're jumping into the pretty incredible true story of Michael and Debbie Maddox. Picture it, it's the late 60s, a time of huge social change, and these two young rebels are chasing one single thing, peace. But their quest is going to take them right through the heart of the counterculture, from anti-war protests to psychedelic drug trips, all in the search for a completely new kind of high. So here's the real puzzle that drives this whole story. How does a self-described peace freak, who's also a drug dealer, trying to change the world, end up finding exactly what he's looking for in a place he never, ever would have expected? Well, their journey all starts with a feeling, and it all kicks off with this deep, nagging, gut feeling that there just had to be more to life. You know? For Michael Maddox, this place was his hometown, and that feeling was so powerful, it was about to launch him on a journey that would literally change everything. So, what was this place? It was Decatur, Illinois. And to really get why Michael and Debbie rebelled so hard, you've got to understand what they were rebelling against. And this really nails the conflict at the heart of their story. On one side, you've got Decatur, a tough, industrial factory town. Michael called it a colorless, black and white world of conformity. But on the other side, you have this explosion of color and life, the 1960s counterculture, a world of freethinkers, artists, and people pushing every single boundary they could find. For two creative rebels like Michael and Debbie, it wasn't even a choice. They had to get out. So they set off to begin their own experiments in finding peace. Not just for the world, but for inside themselves, too. And this took them down a few very different and sometimes very tangled paths. You can see their search kind of unfolded over a few years. It started out political in '68, with Michael filing as a conscientious objector to the Vietnam War. Then by 1970, the search turned inward. That's when they had their first LSD trip. A year later, a vision of the word peace in Christmas lights during a trip feels like this huge, powerful sign. But here's the catch. To fund this whole quest, they started dealing drugs in Boulder. To them, it all made sense. The activism, the drugs, it was all part of the same mission to explore consciousness and spread their message. And if you want to understand what they were chasing, just listen to how Michael describes his first time on LSD. For them, this wasn't about seeing pretty colors. No, this was about reality itself just dissolving. I mean, an experience like this convinced them that drugs were a key, a secret pathway to unlock some deeper, spiritual realm that was hidden from everybody else. But here's where the story starts to take a turn. As their search for this light got more and more intense, their path started getting darker. The very things they thought were leading them to enlightenment, well, they started casting some very, very long shadows. And the problems just started piling up. The paranoia got so bad, Michael talks about having these nightly rituals of checking under his bed and behind the curtains. There were terrifying near-death experiences, like almost driving into a train while they were tripping. And they weren't just dealing to other hippies anymore. They were getting tangled up with seriously dangerous criminals. The beautiful dream of peace was turning into this ugly, waking nightmare of fear and hypocrisy. So this brings them to a huge turning point: transcendental meditation. It was sold to them as a scientific, non-religious technique for inner peace. I mean, that's exactly what they were looking for. But during the initiation, something strange happens. A Bible verse Michael learned as a kid just flashes in his mind: "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." Then he notices hidden symbols, swastikas and tridents, tucked away in a photo of the movement's leader, Guru Dev. And then they do some research and discover the Sanskrit word Dev can mean demon. Their search for peace had led them right into what felt like a spiritual trap. And this was the guru's chilling answer when Michael actually confronted him about the symbols he saw. That evasive, secretive response, it confirmed all their fears. They knew they'd gotten into something they didn't understand, and whatever it wasn't the path to peace. They backed away, fast, feeling more lost than ever before. So they're totally disillusioned with TM, and they're scared of the dark side of the drug world. And this is where their journey takes its most unexpected turn yet. This is the climax of the story, what Michael jokingly calls their intense experience. And the stage for this whole thing was set by a few almost random events. First, they happened to see a movie about Jesus called The Prince of Peace, and it really stuck with them. Then, just a few days later, they very reluctantly agreed to go to a Jesus Freak tent rally. Really, it was just to get Debbie's brother-in-law off their backs. The plan was simple: stay for 5 minutes, and then leave. And that brings us to this one. Specific date: June 12th, 1972. The night that their 5-year-long search for peace would finally, dramatically come to an end. They walked into this massive tent, and the atmosphere, as Michael put it, was electrically charged. There was a hippie rock band on stage singing about Jesus. The preacher had long red hair, and the message, it wasn't about religion. It was about peace and love and a real connection to that same Prince of Peace they'd just seen in the movie. And all of a sudden, everything they'd been searching for, in protests and drugs, in Eastern philosophy, was being offered to them in a language they could finally understand. So when the preacher gave an invitation to meet Jesus, Michael just sprang to his feet, and Debbie was right there beside him. And this is how he described the feeling. It's this profound, total, cleansing transformation. It was a high unlike anything they had ever chased before. The search was over. And the change wasn't slow or gradual. It was immediate. It was absolute. The life they knew before walking into that tent, it simply stopped existing. The transformation was total. The desire for drugs, it was just gone. Their whole dream of living a hippie life on a farm, it didn't matter anymore. They weren't on the run from anything. There was even this recurring dream Michael had about dying before he turned 21, and it suddenly made sense. His old self had died that night. In their minds, they had just enlisted in God's army, and they were ready to share the peace they'd finally found. And that brings us right back to the title of their story. They started out as peace freaks protesting a war, and they ended up as peace freaks for the Prince of Peace. Same name, completely different meaning. So the final question for you is, after hearing their journey, what does that title, peace freak, really mean?